Hey everybody, welcome back. It's your pal Drew. I've been busy with my Random Comics from the Spinner Rack channel, which is growing in leaps and bounds, which I'm very happy about. And I've kind of neglected my first channel, which is not 5 comics. It's basically focusing on one storyline or one artist or whatever. But it's more of a one theme, I guess is the way to put it. Here we go, Marvel Visionaries. You're like, I have not seen this before, dude. Where'd it come from? Well, where do I start? Well, in the 2000s, Marvel had this great series of hardcover books, and they were called Visionaries, and aptly so. You got it was like an oversized hardcover of list of books that Jack worked on, and anyway, there were 2 Jack Kirby ones, there was a Stan Lee one, there was a Steve Ditko one, John Romita Jr., Chris Claremont, Roy Thomas, and I think I got everybody, and Stan, maybe if I didn't mention it. But what happened is, I guess they didn't sell that well. Excuse me. They were about 35, maybe 30 to 35 bucks each one back then. And I'm sure you can find them on the secondary market for about the same, but it only lasted a while, and I was disappointed that it didn't stay. And I'm thinking maybe at the time, I think currently it would sell great. It's just back then, individual artists being ones that aren't, like, you got Jim Lee, you got the Image guys, you got Frank Miller, and it's like, and Mike Mignola, and their stuff's always going to be in print over and over again. You're going to see everything they've done, which is great, more power to them. But somebody like GIL KANE, who is his art is etched in the memory of so many people like me growing up, and I'm sure a lot of his stuff's been lost in the last 2 generations as far as fans being interested in stuff. And that's just how things go. It's like I didn't appreciate Mac Rayboy's Captain Marvel Jr. until I was 40 or so, because it was before my time. But a lot of old comic geeks, much like myself, will love GIL KANE, and I did, and I still do. How can I put it? They quit doing the hardcover ones because if you're not any of those big names at the present, and back then as well, you didn't get a lot of spotlight books that collected different issues from different time periods. So I would have loved to see this as a hardcover. They also did one other one with Steranko, but it was so pitiful. It was so thin. They only had like the 3 Captain America stories did, and laid up at the Stroke of Midnight that he did in Tower of Shadows 1, and he did Our Love #1, which is a 6-page story done in a Peter Mac style. It was so thin. It had like an early issue or 2 of X-Men that Steranko did. One of those early issues that, like, you're really embarrassed to look at. And I'm like, why did they give him a big treatment? I mean, his stuff's been reprinted a lot since then. But GIL KANE's one of those guys that I think... See, I don't know the current audience now. I know a lot of people are, middle-aged like me, and they eat this stuff up because it's just, a lot of us feel, and as far as DC and Marvel, things were more, I hate to say house style's kind of a dismissive term, but just sort of a superhero style like GIL KANE, I would not say was a house style, but he was omnipresent in the late 60s, early 70s, and up until 1980 when it went over to DC, and still was doing a lot of books. So he's mostly known as a cover artist, but he did have certain runs on certain books. He did a couple issues of Captain Marvel. Oh, well, I'll just show you. It's not yapping about it. Anyway, I wish this was a hardcover. I wish you could have continued it with different creators. I would have. How cool would it be to have a Gene Colan Visionaries or a Don Heck Visionaries? Just all those options of the classic creators. But it's not to be. So, but I'm glad I have this. And what they usually do is they start off with the very first book you've done for Marvel. And it's really cringy on almost every one of these creators, except for maybe Jack Kirby or something. But They reprint Tales to Astonish, which Jack Kirby did the layouts and Gil Kane did the pencils, and it was inked by Mike Esposito. And the results are kind of bad. And I hate to say it, just because every artist in a row, they're working against each other. Just their style it's such cross purposes. Scott Edward was Gil Kane's pen name because he was doing stuff at DC like Green Lantern and such. And those are two names of his nephews, I think it was, Gil Kane's nephews. But I mean, this looks horrible. I know the reproduction's not great, but you'll still see a lot of Kirby, but then you'll see once in a while like a Gil Kane face, Gil Kane-ish face right there. But it's incredibly awkward. See, it's just, like I said, the repro is pretty bad too, but it just sort of, it's just really awful. I'm sure Gil felt that way, and like that's not part of Kane's vocabulary. Kirby was more of a, what do you call it? Is it impressionism or anyway? He was more of like a big image that would suggest shadows and shapes, and Kane was like the real deal when it came to anatomy. I guess that's the way to put it. It's like Kirby's anatomy was all over the place, but he had the language to make it really work spectacularly. And Gil Kane, going over Kirby Lance just wasn't really a good fit. But he did a few issues of Tales of Suspense I really love. And he's fighting Power Man, the original Power Man, and Swordsman. So great fun. I had read these in the reprint series in the mid-'70s called Marvel Double Feature. So you got like 10-page episodes. Gil Kane inking himself, which is back then fairly uncommon. Because Marvel books had to be, they just had to keep banging stuff out, and this wasn't quite. Thankfully, the quality was still high because DC was distributing Marvel for years and years when Marvel was really on the balls of their ass. They were just about to crumble, and then DC said, okay, well, we'll do your distribution, but you have to have like just 8 titles. And so the bad part is a lot of artists didn't get work, and if there's a silver lining, it's like comics. Marvel really took off because they were restricted. They didn't thin the soup. They didn't. So you had like a high concentration of really good artists like Kirby, like half an issue of Kirby, half an issue of Gene Colan's Iron Man, that kind of stuff, and it was all top notch. And but like I said, it also was hard. I mean, a lot of artists after a Senate hearings about associating delinquency with comic book readers, never mind the fact that at the time most kids read comics. So it's just like, riding a bicycle is a way to juvenile delinquency, whereas most kids ride a bicycle. So, that Wortham guy. What's interesting is this is a Kane piece of machinery, but he's trying to do Kirby, and it's really cool through his own mindset, his own music, what do you call it? His own vernacular, that's the word. And he even this is a bit of a Kirby swipe as far as the pose, but he's getting a feel for what the Marvel style is. And it's another Kirby style. But Kane picked it up pretty quick. And you've seen that a couple times. I think it was, it was an issue with, a Kirby issue with Batroc Zilliper. And, and continue next issue. So you get like this really strong, great art. Red Skull is back. And, I love that. Very Kirby type robot. Actually reminds me, there was one in Hulk number 5 with Kirby where he was in the ring. He was in like a gladiator situation where he's fighting a robot, and did that very same thing. So that's really swift there. And then Bucky Barnes is back. Now, this is the first time Cap got tricked into it. No, it might be the second or third time, because there was a time where Red Skull had some kind of hypno rays through his agents and, his evil, what do you call this, minion type dudes. And he's always like, oh, Bucky Barnes, oh, wow, okay, yeah. Ah, shit, I fall for it every time. That's great there. And Cap's had it. That, I really love that pose. Look at the eyes. It's so simple, but it tells you what's going on. And there we go. Back to the Kirby. I should bring out the Kirby original. And it's pretty much the same thing. It's just that Kane's anatomy is more literal. And Kirby's just bombastic. So how about those gray backgrounds? I love gray backgrounds. You make everything pop. And Joe Sinnott does the inks here. I'm wondering if Stan got nervous that Gil Kane style, he could sort of do the Marvel style, but not quite. So I think maybe he got Sinnott to ink him to kind of, get a better flair for what's going on. I've always liked the black spot on Captain America's front of his mask where the A is. And I had the Mego doll that came out in '76 or so they had that perpetual black spot, and I just love that look. And there we go. So really neat stuff. Don't hit that switch. And that's amazing there. What a leap. Bam, bam. So he's getting it. He's understanding Kirby a little more. And Sin's tying it in a lot more. That's the other thing. I think Sin was chosen to do these little short stories because he could let the other artists know exactly what a Marvel comic at then should look like. I'm not saying for ill or for good or for ill. I'm just being frank about that. Well, the Skull dies forever. Anyway, Captain Marvel. That was a book that floundered around for a long time. It was featured simple. They came up with Captain Marvel simply for copyright purposes. Captain Marvel was created by C.C. Beck in the early '40s, and I'm trying to think of what the name of the company is. I can't think of it, but it outsold Superman. It was huge, and DC Comics at the time, national periodicals, they sued Captain Marvel because they said it was too close to Superman. But the difference was, the funny thing is, Shazam greatly outsold Superman, who was the hot ticket at the time, and they said it was too similar. But Captain Marvel's Shazam's his powers were magic based, and the origin was completely different. And all the lawyers that decided no, they look the same. They both fly. They're both super strong. So after like a decade of lawsuits, finally Fawcett, that's what it was. Finally, Fawcett just closed its doors. They just ran out of money, and that's a real damn shame. But that's business. It's like, especially back then, the comics were. It was a great unknown as far as lawsuits and what you could do, what you can't do. So Captain Marvel canceled. And then for about, like 6 to 10 years later, different companies would bring back Captain Marvel because nobody had the copyright. It was no longer reprinted. Back then, they didn't do trade paperback reprints. They didn't do, books like this. Which would collect. They had some, like the Smithsonian Institute of Comic Books came out, and I think it had one of the old Captain Marvels in it, but now he has to go by Shazam. So either Martin Goodman or Stan to say, we got to get that name. Our name's Marvel. So, and they came up with this guy, but he was in a green and white Kree costume. It was a very kind of basic costume. It was almost like a uniform that his fellow Kree men would wear. And it was done hastily. It was done by Stan and Gene Colan just to get that name, get that Marvel copyright. I totally get that. At the same time, there was a Captain Marvel came out from smaller publishers. There's another one who Captain Marvel was like this jigsaw puzzle type character who would say split, and his body parts would split when fighting. And it I don't even know how many people saw it when it came out. So Marvel just stepped on it and totally revamped Captain Marvel. And now he had negabands instead of his little ray gun and just flying around. And pretty trippy there. With Roy Thomas, he and Gil Kane really became close. Dan Adkins is probably his best inker, even according to Gil Kane. Aside from himself, Gil Kane said Dan Adkins was the best inker for his work. This comes right after... can you tell it's Sunday morning? It just came from an issue of Captain America where the Red Skull had taken over Cap's body. And he was just being an a-hole, and he backhands Bucky, but it's not Bucky, it's Rick Jones. I mentioned him in another episode of my other channel that he was basically a superhero groupie. He loved hanging out with the Hulk, the Avengers, Captain America, Rom, Space Knight, and the Hulk, back to back. And so goes through the recent past of he's got this, and this was pasted together for the cover. And really nice looking stuff. That's a real wild panel there. I mean, it works. It's just that similar to Neil Adams. Gil Kane could pull off that crazy foreshortening. These elongated figures. Like that. That's just so audacious. I don't know how many artists could do a shot from that angle. And you know what? Because of Kane's mastery of the figure, it works. He makes it work. I love the green tones here. I love like monochrome panels or covers. And there we go. Wow, it's just amazing stuff. And so, it definitely is a vast improvement over the previous version. And there again, huge foreshortening. But yeah, it's very Neil Adams inspired. Well, Adams inspired so many people. It was sort of like there was, in mainstream comics, there was the Neil Adams inspiration, and then there was the Jack Kirby inspiration. There wasn't a whole lot of room between the two as far as straight superhero comics and Marvel DC. That is so insane. And that's his neck there, just so you know. Just so you know his head didn't go away. That's just crazy. I think even Neil would give a little pause there and say, oh, wow, okay, well, you probably could do it, but just like, damn, Gil, okay. Frank Giacoya, one of my favorite anchors of the, I guess it's still, no, is it the Silver Age? I think we're stepping into the Bronze Age, I can't remember which. But Giacoya was famous for, not famous, he was beloved by Stan and others because he could ink a lot like John Romita Sr. This is about the time, this is shortly after the death of Captain Stacy, and who was Gwen's father. And here you go, the part of Adam Warlock. Now that is a real testament to knowing your anatomy. I'm wondering if he's been looking at Bern Hogarth stuff, or if he's just kind of winging it. But if you see every rib, you see every such knowledge of the anatomy. That's so audacious. So many people can't do a torso. Period. You just place the six-pack right in the middle, underneath the ribs, or the shape of the ribs. I think Ralph Reese did this cover. No, I'm wrong. Dan Adkins. Okay. I was going to make a dumb joke about we have a steady diet of Adkins here, and I just realized just now saying it, I sound twice as stupid trying to make that joke. Beautiful. There's the cocoon that Kirby had done to create him, which was would later become Adam Warlock, and later on he became more and more of like a Christ figure, but that sort of thing was getting really played out. Like, you can't do a Superman movie without the analogy of Jesus Christ. It just seems really shorthanded and lazy. It's like, maybe do it once or twice for an analogy, but after that it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. really sweet stuff. And he didn't design a High Evolutionary. That's a Kirby design. It's always cool to see unique character designs that you don't see every day because you're unique. So I've always found Warlock boring until Starling. He was one of those characters that, just like Captain Marvel, cool as he was dull as dishwater. They were basically just characters that were in stories that dealt with plot rather than any kind of nuanced, I don't know how you explain it, like emotions and the like. Here we got inked by Dick Giordano, one of the best artists of the Silver Age and Bronze Age, and he was a fantastic inker. And he worked with Neil Adams. He was at the studio, Continuity Studios, as a lot of great artists passed through there. And Dick Giordano started off with Charlton Comics, where he was the head honcho when it came to the comics part of the division. And then later on he went to DC and brought all these creators with him, like Jim Aparo, etc., etc. And then later on he was just sort of everywhere. But he was basically, always a nice surprise to see Dick Giordano ink a book in a Marvel comic, because it wasn't that common. And he could also draw a mean Batman too. He did some great solo stories of Batman. So you see this fluid, elegant figure work. Now, this inking looks bolder here, and there's a reason why. If you've seen all my episodes, you'll know why. This and that other previous page were done this way. There was a time where the economy, especially comics, got hit really hard. And I gotta take a drink of water before I gag. Much better. Well, anyway, Marvel Comics, like most comics, were just hurting at the time because you had the energy crisis, you had OPEC, and all kinds of stuff that was affecting the economy, outside forces, and just a lot of different stuff was going on that hurt comics, because comics were, even though they were a throwaway thing at the time, meant for kids, their sales were just hurting because people were growing out of comics. And like my wife, she read Archie comics as a kid, and then she grew up. And the thing is, comic fans like me won't grow up. For the most part, I paid for a mortgage. I have a car. I'm normal. But the child inside of me still loves comics, and that's fine. Similar to like a lot of people my age still love the rocking and the rolling that's on the radio. Well, this page is a long way to get to this point, but this and this, in order to save money, instead of 17 pages, they would do they would have the artist draw and ink 16 pages, but one of the pages would be comprised, it would be shot together, like you would do half a page. Basically, this is what you would do. You do a normal page, and you just split it in half down the middle, and then you got 2 pages. Does that make sense? This is on the right side of the left side of this. That was on the. I'm talking way too much about it, but it has the origin. It's just beautiful. I mean, Giordano is always such a nice treat. Here we go. Probably, I mean, I'm not the only one saying this, but probably the very best Avengers What If issue ever. It was only issue 3. The book had been just created by Roy Thomas, and the first issue was great. Second issue was not that good. This was excellent. Jim Shooter, a young Jim Shooter, just really, who had a lot to prove. He does some real exceptional stuff for GIL KANE and Klaus Janson. Wow. I mean, and it is a beautiful marriage. It is really, really super cool. That's after the Hulk left with issue 2 of the Avengers, and they try to get the Hulk later on, but then for a microsecond, Giant Man stops him. He's like, "Holy guys, wait a minute. Are you crazy, Giant Man? I've got to go after the Hulk. Unhand me, mortal." And he's like, well, calm yourself down, think a little. This is strictly a volunteer organization. We can't force the Hulk to stay. And then, but Giant Man's words ring true, so say Thor. None of us are bound by oath. I never figured it was necessary. I just thought you're driving at is what you plan to leave too. So go ahead and quit, long hair. I've had it with your blasted superior complex anyway. Stay all bit to this Iron Man. Blah, blah, blah. You don't know what it means to be a god. Yeah. So he's like, I would my big yap. There you go. So they split up for a while. Oh man, that's so great. Artwork's just amazing. Really cool stuff. And got that zipatone going. It's just, I would love to have seen Janson ink KANE on a monthly basis, but KANE wasn't really a monthly guy. I mean, he could do monthlies, but he hopped around. He did a ton of covers for Marvel, and he even said later in life his one regret was that he never had one book that he was associated with. He never had like one big hit. There was Green Lantern, but as far as the maturation of GIL's art, he felt, understandably, he felt like in the 70s and 80s that he didn't really associate himself with one book. He just hopped around. But this stuff shouldn't work, but it does. My man Iron Man's taking on two of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. Got hatching on the back, and muscles just work. That's the thing. Janson also knows how muscles work, because he would do stuff over anybody. He would do like a fill-in on Daredevil over Sal Buscema, and you would see Daredevil's back. All the right muscles are in place, and you sort of know it was more simplified by Sal because he was just doing like 3 books a month, keeping Marvel going. Gotta have the old gut shot. That's just astonishing stuff, man. And what's weird, at the same time, just by sheer coincidence, that same month there was an issue of Jim Shooter and Gil Kane Daredevil that was inked by Klaus Janson. So I thought, oh, this could be great. It's going to go on, and I always hoped Gil Kane would stick to something, but I guess he was just restless. There we go. All right, this is hang on there. June, and this came out in hang in there. June also. You got 2 Shooter Kane stories at the same time. All the difference is Jim Mooney's doing Daredevil, and this was just a real incredible. Daredevil had been floundering for about a year, and I like Jim Mooney's work on here. And maybe a lot of people wouldn't, but Jim Mooney's someone I always liked. Some more shots in the. I love that. He just headbutt someone's gut. That's his big thing, and it works. That's great. His senses are all messed up, and he's kind of, because he's dizzy from that. He got hit with a golf ball by Bullseye early in the issue, and so he just reaches out. Man, that's gutsy. Got the follow through there. That's a page that you'd love to have. What I mean is own it. Okay, now we're going to What If number 24. What's weird is I love KANE. I love Giacoya. Tony Isabella is a solid writer. This isn't that great a story, and the art isn't that great either. And I don't know what it was, but it looked to me like KANE really just busted this out. This is right before he went to DC Comics, so I don't know if his heart was in it. Also, Frank Giacoya's inks got a little heavier. They got a little less nuanced. Like that, these like huge lines. That is not like what you expect from a KANE Giacoya book. Great and that long panel there is wonderful. But I remember I thought I should love this, but I'm not loving it. I don't know why. So he saves Gwen Stacy. That's pretty neat. That's very much I think Giacoya was tapping into a John Romita romance mag. Now here's where it gets weird. That is such an awful. I mean, it works maybe anatomically, but it looks horrible. It just does. And it doesn't look like a Gil Kane figure, although to my knowledge he's never had assistance. And he's just so fast. So this is kind of very awkward. I can pass that. And here's the beauty. Two Gun Kid. penciled and inked by Gil Kane. This is in 1988 or 89. He went over to DC for about 8 years. Then when Shooter left, a lot of the expatriates who left Marvel for DC were coming back to Marvel with open arms from Tom DeFalco, who was the editor-in-chief after Shooter left. So this was it's like a 6 or 8 page story of the Two Gun Kid in Marvel Comics Presents, which was a weekly anthology, actually. What was it, every 2 weeks? I don't know. But it had 4 no ads, 4 features. And sometimes it would be an ongoing one, like Black Panther by Don McGregor, Gene Colan, Klaus Janson, Tom Palmer, sorry. Or this is just like, I don't want to say filler, but it's beautiful. And you know what? Doing a short story is a lot harder than doing a long story, because you can't bullshit your way as far as making stories drag out. So it's amazing stuff, and he's inking himself here. You can tell he's passionate about this. So if he had his druthers, I mean, there'd been westerns would have been remain the mainstream of comics like they were in the 50s. I like the colors too; they're very subdued. This is, everything's nice and clear, but you know, it just that little Gil Kane crackle stuff is just really, really super cool. Well, here it is. This is the cover, and scoot it closer. This is Gil Kane's favorite cover of all time. He couldn't remember what issue it was, but he described it, and this is exactly what it is. Which one is it? This came out after he passed away several years earlier, and that was his favorite. And just look at that; it's so magic. Look at the sun. You know, actually, that sun influenced me on an issue of Birds of Prey number 8, where there's like these Klieg lights that are on, where Nighthawk and Oracle are getting on the trapeze. You know, it was like a romance story, and I think I had this in mind when I did like the fades on the Klieg lights. So that's just like, and some more. See, you could tell he really, I mean, what else? And you know, he's had better covers than these. I think part of it was like hastily done. You could do, and I would love to see like a coffee table. Hey, check this out. Breakdowns. And you could tell exactly what's going on. So he didn't hand these to Klaus. That was Frank Miller ended up doing stuff like this, doing breakdowns, and but Kane would come back and finish this halfway, a little more than halfway, and then Klaus Janson would work his mojo on it. Here's the Gwen Stacy funeral, and that face there. It's kind of an emo looking face. John Romita, he totally restructured the face, but the layouts were still used tightly. Man, that is such a tricky thing there. And I think that's it. Let me see anything. Okay. Oh, visual art by Gil Kane. A lot of people didn't like his Hulk because he looked really different. He was off model. He did create the Abomination though, and that's a beautiful character design, and I always loved his stuff. Whoa. Original art edited for the first time. That's it. So, check this out. You probably got on eBay, or maybe Ides in Pittsburgh has it, or Phantom of the Attic, or there's so many other great ones. New Dimensions. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. But Pittsburgh is rife with fantastic comic stores. That's it. So hope you enjoyed this episode. I had fun all over again just looking at it. Have a good day, everybody.